of you online, I just want to let you know we're going to be starting in about 5 minutes. So just hold on, you're in the right place, and we'll be getting going soon. We're just going to let a few more people, give them time to come and be here. Thank you.
To change, oh my brothers, let's make a change. Change for a future. Oh, see the big picture and change for each other. We're in this lifeboat all together. Let's make a change, oh my sisters. Let's make a change. And we're made of soul, so we're told. Every child in every nation, with open eyes, can't help but realize we've got to change. Oh my brothers, we've got to change. Oh my sisters, let's make a change. We can't stay the same. There's no easy way. Change. Let's make a change. We can't stay the same. There's no easy way. Lord, help us change. Be the change. Be the change. Be the change. Be the change. Yeah, yeah.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone here to our first Sustainable Solutions Seminar for 2017. And as we know, we're here about the cargo bikes and the California Potential. So very exciting opportunity to learn more about cargo bikes. My name is Kim Glazard. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for CalEPA. And before I introduce our host for today's program, I'd like to take care of a little housekeeping items. First off, I don't know if you noticed when you came in, but lovely refreshments around the room. So we've got some drinks over here, some other kind of snack food breads, special breads on the back, and we have Conscious Creamery at the far, my left, but your right side back there, and I think they're giving samples. It'll be a wonderful opportunity to taste their fabulous food. So restrooms are out the back, down at the end of the hall, and around the corner you'll see them on the right there. And in event of a fire alarm, everyone needs to go to their nearest exit, down the stairs, which are right back here, and out the door we all meet over at Cesar Chavez Park, which is catty corner from our building here. And lastly, if you did not sign up, please do so on your way out so that we can keep a track of everybody and, well, not track of you, but that in case we have other events that are similar, we can let you know and you'll be able to be on our list. So I would like now to introduce our host for the program today, Mr. Jason Meggs, who's going to guide us through the wide world of cargo bikes and the infinite possibilities to integrate them into the California lifestyle. Please welcome Mr. Jason Meggs. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Can you hear me? Thanks, everyone, for coming. Let's see. I thought I'd start off with a show of hands. How many folks are still arriving, but how many of you ride a bicycle? All right, so we've got a lot of people familiar with bikes. That's good. Most people are familiar with bikes. I won't ask you how often you ride. How many of you have carried something substantially large or challenging by bicycle? Maybe about half, roughly? All right, that is good. Let me also ask, how many of you are involved in one way or another with policy in California? Also about half, but a somewhat different half. So that's good. And we also have unlimited number of folks out in the internet land. So feel free to interrupt at any time with a question, but because we are webcasting, we need to get you to a microphone. So we will have a panel up later. We want as much time for discussion as possible, so we can actually go as much as an hour later. So bear that in mind, but we'll try to get as much done by 2. I know, and if people have to go early, that's understandable. But try to get to one of the mics, or we'll bring you a mic if you do want to say something substantive so everyone can hear, and it's also being recorded, FYI. Okay, so with that, no podium, so I can't put my paper down. This is my bicycle origin. I was a biking kid. There I am on the family farm, about 2 or 3 years old, having a blast, and didn't give up, just kept riding. Came to Berkeley, and that was my first introduction to cargo bikes. I had actually worked as a bicycle messenger after high school in Washington, D.C., but this is where I learned that, over in Europe, they're making all these things that carry lots of stuff, and they're really different. And that was an inspiration. That's Pedal Express. They actually deliver for the city of Berkeley and now in Oakland. I started trying crazy things with bikes. Here I am as transit man, flying into the scene of a crime to help people board the bus or whatever, get their paper, their money to go through the machine for their ticket, and even started to move houses with my friends and just do all sorts of creative things with bikes. So this is sort of like a modern barn raising. Everybody's chipping in. And so you see we've got at least 1 or 2 truckloads there. We moved the whole house and all the furniture, couches, and everything by bicycle. So I also started to get involved with this idea of car-free cities and organizing it with the World Car-Free Network. And in 2010, at this conference in York, England, I was helping facilitate a workshop on freight in a car-free city. And we actually had some big companies there. We had a local bike delivery, and we had a guy who had driven a van, and just a wide cross-section of the logistics industry in Europe, and me from the US. And everyone agreed, including the big companies, that it would be faster, cheaper, quicker, more preferable, more environmentally sustainable to deliver in cities by bicycle. So that was kind of a revelation. I started saying, we need to do a project on this. We need to do a study. We need to help this happen. And if you think about it, there are cities through history, and Venice still does it, that are delivering things without the use of cars. Granted, they're using boats, but there's a lot of human-powered transport. And once upon a time, when bicycles were much more common, all over the world, they had all kinds of specialty cargo bicycles. And there, the bottom one in the USA is an IBM service truck. And even today on the island of Mackinac, Michigan, it's a car-free island, kind of a tourist destination. There you've got a horse and you've got UPS. And I spoke recently with the head of alternative propulsion, global alternative propulsion for UPS, and he said, in theory, all of our packages in the US could be delivered by bicycle. It's just a question of political will and resources. He said we need a solid deployment strategy, we need a pilot project, and if you think about it, if we start to transition our cities to be more sustainable, thinking about things like climate change, livability, how much could we reduce the use of the car and increase public transport, walking, and bicycling, the idea of the car-free city? But let's start with cargo bikes. So I ended up working in Europe on bicycle projects for a while and other sustainable projects, talking at the EU and Parliament, presenting my research, telling people about ideas like, why don't we expand congestion pricing zones in order to facilitate a safe space where small electric vehicles and human-powered vehicles would be the norm. Because one of the reasons people aren't doing it is there's a paradigm shift that has to happen. People are scared. They don't have the facilities. We need at least basic infrastructure so more people will do it. Then I come back to Sacramento, and out front there's an ELF, right? This is the idea of small electric vehicles. They claim that ELF plus 2 kids is 18,000 miles per gallon. So right after I left Europe, this psychologistics project started, and it was so successful they did a second one. And this was actually fundamentally an energy project. So the second one is called Psychologistics Ahead, and they just held a major conference, thought to be the biggest cargo bicycle conference in history. About 400 participants, 41 exhibitors, 27 countries. I was invited by my 2 colleagues there who are speaking, Suzanne Reiten and Carl Reiter, who I think are on the webcast now. Hi. And I just missed Europe, and I think this is so important. I wanted to go and learn what's going on, see it firsthand. And so I went there, and it was awesome. It was really great. There's Suzanne again. And it was even filmed by local television. It was in Vienna, Austria, very livable city, considered a very happy, friendly city people enjoy living in. They actually have a TV program by Cargo Bike. That's a studio on wheels, and it went on the Cargo Bicycle Parade. There was also a radio station, lots of other media on the parade. Here, this guy's doing interviews. We had UPS there with one of their pilot projects in Europe. We had a lot of custom bikes, 41 exhibitors, right? This one is a work truck for someone doing service calls. It's got a ladder, you can have tools and parts. You could be a plumber, you could be an electrician. And actually folks in Europe who are shifting this model say that they do better, they save money, they can take longer vacations, they're happier doing this. And this was great. Speaking of work bikes, here was one of the demonstrations. It's full of tools. There's a nice little trailer. There were so many things to see, I can't show them all, but all their presentations are aligned to this and past conferences. The food was delivered by bike. Rita Brinks is a local company. They had all these different vending carts, kind of like that beautiful vegan cashew-based ice cream truck back there. And this is their company. In 3 years, it's grown to have about 8 cargo bikes, 5 folks in the staff, 5 folks in the kitchen, and it's growing. So it's very successful in
Tell me what's happening.
Here's some food delivery on the parade.
What's happening? We are selling coffee. We're not selling. We are giving coffee
chai tea and Croydon tea.
I want to try a chai.
You want to try a chai?
Please.
With pleasure.
Yes, I will try it with pleasure.
All right. It's true. It was really good. Perfect moment. Look, they were giving green smoothies by bicycle. And that big one down there, that's actually a CSA delivery type of service from Linz, which is a city in Austria. And there was a presentation on sustainable delivery of regional food using bicycles and mass transit. And they're actually doing a pilot project. So this is actually vegetables being delivered with a regional bus to the city. So you may be asking, yeah, but what's the nuts and bolts? What's the real potential, right? So the first psychologistics project found that half of all trips in the city are related to the transportation of goods. Light goods represent over a third of these trips, so those are obviously perfect for bicycle. You can carry big things on a bike, but light goods are universally doable. And about half of those trips with light goods were commercial, and about half were personal and family trips.
It's so sleek. You are really put together beautifully.
Yeah, thanks.
You can just fly through the rain.
Theoretically, yeah.
Theoretically. Do you like the cargo bicycle? Uh-oh.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, I think so.
We could watch an introductory video, but I think you've had a lot of introduction already. So without further ado, we have Ellie Steele, who is a league bicycle instructor and runs a website, Tiny Helmets, Big Bikes.
So my emphasis is on biking with precious cargo. So my monsters, my little kids, are now 6 and 8. They've been on the bike since about 6 months old, and so I'm just going to kind of talk about how we've gone through that journey. So obviously, a lot of you guys are bikers. You all know that biking by yourself, it's fun. It's a lot of freedom. You get on your bike and you go. And then that happens. So now things slow down a little bit. And, the obvious thing, you have a family and you put that child in a car seat and off you go. It's all sort of what's expected. It's what seems safest. But if I had known better, looking out into the wider world, there are many families that use cargo bikes to carry infants, just even after birth, and they ride around and are able to do that safely, with some care and attention. So if I had known better, I would have started a little bit sooner with cargo biking with babies. And one of the things that I hear very often is, aren't you scared? Isn't it dangerous to put your child on a bicycle? And I often counteract that with, the most dangerous place to put your child is inside a car. Most collisions happen. It's one of the most deadly places to put your child. We don't want to put our children in danger, but we need to change that mindset that it's the safest place for a child to be inside. And instead, getting them on a bike, they get that freedom, they get that fresh air. And let's check out some different pictures. So when we started with the classic trailer and the bicycle, and we wanted to shift our focus to using our bikes as our main form of transportation, and lugging out the trailer and pedaling it was heavy, and it was hard to get that motivation to get out there and carry our kids. It was a lot of work. So we checked out one of our favorite local bike shops, Practical Cycle, and bought our first cargo bike 6 years ago. And about 10 months later, we realized that the car was sitting out in front of the house much more often than necessary. And we ended up getting rid of the car, and we've been car-free now for about 6 years. So our first cargo bike, who needs a car? That is an entire week's worth of groceries on that bicycle right there. So we can load it up with at least 100 to 300 pounds of cargo. We think cargo bikes are really cool, so we go out there, we get a lot of fresh air, we're saying hi to everyone we pass. The kids now think it's just as common or just as normal to put on their helmets and go out the back door as it is to go out the front door and buckle into a car seat. So this is just their way of life at this point because they've gotten so used to it and it's ingrained in their lifestyle. So with kids comes a lot of stuff. and figuring out how to load that on. There's so many different styles of bicycles, and finding your community was really helpful because in the beginning it kind of seems like you're the only one out there. You sort of feel like that's traveling sideshow where people are staring and looking and curious about what you're up to. And then you start noticing more people out there. And at this point, there's so many families on bikes, I don't even know them all, which makes me really happy. So lots of different styles for lots of different needs, very unique setups. Since there's not one perfect bike for everyone, it's really great to find that community and be able to test out different options. So again, different choices. And probably one of the other common questions we get is, what happens when it rains? Well, we don't melt. So we put on our rain gear and we hop out and we ride. We've got lots of good rain gear, sun protection for those really hot days. You can see the front loader cargo bike has a nice windshield right there, and the kids stay happy and dry, and it sort of helps them get acclimated with the weather. They're not fragile, they're not made of sugar, and they're just used to it. Riding in the rain is a wonderful experience. And if she can do it, this is my friend Emily Finch with 7 children and on a teeter-totter. So I kind of look at her and think, well, there are no excuses. That might not be exactly what you feel like doing, but there are so many different options and ways to make this work. It's not as scary as it seems. It's actually quite relaxing. And now that my kids are used to riding bikes, they think it's normal. They're happy to get on their bike and explore the city. They're getting that freedom. They're getting that independence. And biking parents raise these great biking kids, which are our next generation, to get past that car-dependent lifestyle and see that there are viable options on 2 wheels, 3 wheels as well. And as your family grows, they get older, cargo bikes are a great way to take, this is my cousin who's just a few years younger than I am. I've taken my friends to the airport, to the train station. These cargo bikes can definitely transition with your family as you grow. Some of the great benefits, obviously, we are happier. I'm not stressed trying to find parking, circling these one-way streets, trying to find a place to park. I roll right up, sometimes right inside the building, right here. We're healthier. We're getting enough exercise every day. It's kind of tricky when you're stuck in an office all day to get that hour of exercise that we're supposed to get. So instead, it's ingrained in our lifestyle. I feel like I'm a good example for my child. This is a way that I can show them how we can be environmentally friendly. We get this great community connection. Their favorite game is to say hi to everyone they pass and keep track of how many people say hi back to them. You definitely can't do that from the back seat of a car. We're saving about $10,000 a year, and it's minimizing our environmental impact. So finding those resources, finding your community either online or locally. Sacramento Kiddo Mass is a great group of families that are riding with kids. My website is tinyhelmetsbigbikes.com, and this is definitely something that I can talk about forever and ever, but I know that there's other great presentations. So feel free to email me any questions, tinyhelmets@gmail.com. It's probably the best thing that we ever did as a family. These cargo bikes have been revolutionary to our lifestyle. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Ellie. So that was the family side of things. And now we ask, what about commercial cargo? One great thing about this conference is it had a ton of sort of engineering and logistics perspectives and studies. And if you're a real engineering wonk, I think you're also the type of person who'll go and look at those presentations and follow up, but we'll give some overview of that. So there are big companies that are trying things. UPS even has one in this country, and there are a number of UPS, DHL in other countries. FedEx and others are doing this. Corporate fleets and local governments are starting to buy bicycles, including cargo bikes. There are existing bicycle delivery, parcel delivery services in various cities. And of course, service vans. There are sole proprietors who make a custom bike that lets them go out and fix things at your house or your car or make keys or what have you. So I've got 2 mics now, so I can run over and start a short video. Can you hear me again? Thank you. So this is DHL, and obviously they have made a custom solution. These sort of recumbent cargo trikes that have a modular cargo capacity that can just roll right onto the back. And here's a short interview.
Well, if you look at two vehicles burning fuel and replacing them with two bicycles, I think there's a significant gain, up to 16 tons per annum. If you consider the driving distances can be reduced from our carbon footprint.
So that's 16 tons per vehicle, and you may be familiar that that's more than the average person's vehicle. So then here's UPS with a cargo bike that they say they've been perfecting over there in Europe and in Portland, which is now ready for rollout. Here they are in Hamburg.
Welcome to Hamburg. We're in a densely populated area, and commercial traffic in these kind of areas, well, they have a competition with walking trails, cycling trails, roads. So we need new concepts, new ideas to get this, well, all together.
There was a very high pressure of delivery in the street, and we tried to find an approach to reduce the traffic of delivery cars and maintain the high level of service. After dialogue with different companies, only UPS managed to cooperate with us. They made investments to leave a container here in the street and do the last mile by feet and by bike.
When UPS came to us with this idea, we said this is brilliant. We really like it, and this is exactly what we need.
Our city project is where we stage containers in the early morning, and we will deliver from there with bicycles supported with electric motors and by foot.
For 3 years I'm driving a bicycle now. It's great. In the beginning it was different kind of working, but after a few weeks I think it started to be fun. You can talk to the customers, and it's more personality sometimes than with the car. You are more nearer to the customers.
Well, with this new bicycle and the other...
Okay, so here's another interesting source of data. There's not always that much data in the USA on how to gauge what the cargo bike implementation would be and how to model it. But this is from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. They have some tools and a whole bunch of data like this with, this was 94 vehicles over 974 days. And the bottom line is the number of stops per mile. So you can kind of think as you get up to 14 stops per mile, you could be walking that, right? I mean, so somewhere in there is the potential for using cargo bikes, for sure. And in fact, as you get toward fewer stops per mile, as long as the distances aren't too great, what you do is you sort of switch out one big truck for maybe two, or maybe two trucks for three bikes, whatever the equation is, as you figure out that logistical pattern, and you save a lot of money on trucks. I think in Toronto there were something like a 1,500,000 per year just in parking tickets. Obviously there's a lot of other things that go into trucks, and trucks also have a lot of environmental and public health impacts. So that's something to think about. And more bikes is not a bad thing, is it? That also means more jobs, more green jobs. So here's a couple studies. There's a growing body of scientific literature. I'm just going to give a few highlights from a couple studies. One German study found the potential to substitute 19 to 40% of miles in the city. So that's actual VMT reduction. So you can get a carbon equivalent and the emissions equivalent of what you're reducing from the emissions in the city. And they found that commercial transport contributed about 20% of urban emissions. And they were testing 40 electric cargo bikes. Here's a Portugal study that found that about 10% of existing deliveries in the urban area doesn't need any change. It's basically cargo bike was the same as van. It's sort of a one for one. And they found that there were 73% emission reductions and 25% external cost reductions. So there are also operational benefits. You don't get stuck in traffic, and trucks and vans are actually often running empty or nearly empty. And there's that green jobs potential. So here's an example from just across the Cesar Chavez Park here in Sacramento. This fellow is delivering some produce, a small load that could easily be carried by bicycle, with that large truck that's taking a lane right now, a loading zone, and it's basically empty in there. I don't know where he was in his delivery pattern, but it's not uncommon to see a big truck being used for a small job, because that's the tool you use and you got a job and you go and do it, right? Here's an example from just a week ago in Oakland. UPS, very nice. They didn't park in the bike lane. They parked out there. And here comes the load. That could easily go on a bike truck, right? He's just pushing it out. But he's going to do extra work. And the van at this point is empty. It did probably start full, but it's empty now. So the load, he's going to do 2 transfers and carry it up into a truck and down, when he could have just rolled something into there, filled it once, and be on his way. So there, it's not an apples to apples comparison. There's a lot of ways you can save with cargo bikes that helps make them make sense. So how do you do it? This is from a 2013 presentation. Gets the simple idea that somehow you get a bunch of stuff to someplace close enough to bike it, right? From this conference, the keynote from Michael Colville Anderson suggested that cities that have a river, and many European cities have rivers, you can take a barge instead of a truck and have distribution points along the river. So other benefits, health and safety benefits, reducing noise and vibration, that's also a health impact. It also damages buildings. Roadway damage, it's a huge part of our transportation budget, is just fixing roads. You could reduce the number of roads that get heavy vehicles. I think that's obvious. Air pollution comes from those delivery vehicles. Not always this bad, but you can't always see it and it's bad, so I thought it'd be good to see it. Here's some roadway damage from trucks. That's an extreme example, but you get the idea. Obviously, trucks are dangerous in the city. They have crashes. Actually, someone I work with is originally from India, and she said that when she was a kid, they loved to do this. They would all take pedicabs, and all those kids probably pulled together and got a pedicab together to get home from the bus or whatever. But today she doesn't feel safe doing it because there's so much traffic, so much pollution. It doesn't feel safe. It's very unpleasant. But when she was a kid, she loved to do it, and the traffic wasn't there. Fun fact from India, something like less than 3% of people are using those vehicles, but they've totally changed the living environment. Vandama Shiva gives a great talk on that. Okay, so what's the problem? What's the barrier? The paradigm shift idea, we need more facilities, we need more provision, safe, seamless facilities, safe parking, places to charge. E-bikes, very popular in Europe, not really happening yet in the US to those levels. It's like 1,000 times more in Europe. And it's been funded, it's been incentivized. Equal access and comprehensive access. So here's a complete streets example from the California Bicycle Coalition just yesterday. Sent out an email blast because there was a survey, a statewide poll of voters found that 80% of voters support complete streets, which is where you provide for every type of traveler. 8 in 10. And then 2/3 agree that the city government should do more to encourage bicycling. So that shows that there's a lot of public support right now for those provisions. Here's an example of people garnering public support. This is for a Bay Bridge bike path. Critical, the major commute corridor in the San Francisco Bay Area, not allowed to bicycle across it. Many people would, so here's a show of support at the regional MPO, Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Here's another slide from Michael Colville Anderson. It's from the Eiffel Tower, I believe. We know how to do it. We just doctored it up to show a little bit more livable space. Here's another slide from the conference, just pointing out that there's a lot of free parking. Cars are sort of inherently more secure, although not perfectly. It's not so convenient to charge your electric bike out on the street. So one way that Europe got to this point where they have even tens of thousands of cargo bikes in some of the popular cities is through incentives. It was public policy. We're going to increase this. We're going to fund this. Here's another Colville slide from his keynote, but it nicely summarizes a bunch of different places. They've had free cargo bike lending in Copenhagen for over 20 years. Copenhagen is now one of the top developed bicycle cities, if you're not familiar. Very high mode share. Top right, Malmo, Sweden, spending $625,000 on a cargo bike pilot. And there are other ones there, I won't read them all. But there's various subsidies for families, et cetera. Austria, where the conference was, the whole country has this type of incentive support, depending on whether it's business, municipality, individuals, whether it's an electric bike, bigger or smaller, the incentives vary. But at the conference, they actually announced that they're giving much bigger, I think 1,000 to 2,000 euro incentives for folks to buy a cargo bike, whether business or residential. They sort of split it up. And whether it's electric or not, you get a larger subsidy if it's electric. And within 24 hours, they'd had hundreds of applications. So there's demand out there. People just think cargo bikes cost too much. Well, in talking with manufacturers, I was told that actually, if you even had an order of 200 or 300 bikes, you will reduce the cost by 30 to 60%. By the time you get to 1,000, you reduce the cost of a cargo bike from, say, $3,000 to $1,000. So that makes it much more, and without sacrificing quality. That's what the industry told me. So more stakeholder meetings may be called for, but it's very promising. And also, this is one of the most exciting things I thought personally about this incentive program. If you agree to share your cargo bike through an online tool, after 2 or 3 years, you get to keep the bike forever. And what a great way to, A, demo the bikes, get more people seeing if it works for them, B, gathering data, because they sign up online, you can have a short survey, like what were you going to do instead, and what are your daily habits? Things like that are possible. And so that helps build the case of, hey, this is actually helping achieve our environmental goals. And as you may know, California has some environmental goals. And there are some California entities that want to do something along these lines. The Bay Area Air District applied for $2.7 million to fund 1,000 cargo bikes and another $125,000 for a 10 bicycle loaner program. Unfortunately, it wasn't funded at that time, but you get the idea. This is the kind of thing that could be possible. The California Bike Coalition, CalBike, recently sent a letter to the Air Resources Board asking for a $10 million incentive program, including funding for electric cargo bikes, which my understanding is helped result in an RFP with a smaller amount of money available. But from reviewing them, so far, no one's really put forward a cargo bike proposal there. So that's the end of the talking section. I wanted to make sure I had some links to some of and names for some of the things that were shown, the videos. You can contact me directly if you have more questions. And now I think we'd like to shift into a discussion. And while our panel is coming up, we have, again, Ellie Steele here from, who gave the presentation earlier, and we have, let me get my notes. We have Jared Sanchez, Policy Associate from CalBike, which was just mentioned repeatedly. We have Andrea Cepini, owner of Conscious Creamery. And if John Boyer from Edible Pedal is here, right there, you're all welcome to come up. We've got 4 chairs. Is there anyone else in the audience who has some expertise they want to share? At any point, you can raise your hand and I'll bring you a microphone, or you can go to a microphone and ask a question or make a statement. We thought we'd start off with just a big picture question for our panel. What kinds of things could we do in California to really increase the use of cargo bikes?
I can, this is...
Whoever takes initiative can start. Very open format here. By the way, this is the first time in history this room has had a circle of chairs.
Yeah.
This is creative art here. Probably the first time we've had pedal-powered gelato. Feel free to get a sample. There's also vegan organic food in the back and some homemade specialty tea. What type of tea is it? It's immunity. Thank you.
Great. So again, I'm Jared Sanchez from the California Bicycle Coalition. I'm a policy associate there. So to answer the question, and I think, I guess I took initiative so quickly, is because I had something definitely directly on my mind regarding kind of like state policy perspective. And earlier this year, ARB initiated the Advanced Clean Local Truck Rule, which focuses on last mile delivery, which I believe has a focus on like class 3 to 7 trucks. What wasn't mentioned in the initial work plan until myself and others brought it up in that workshop were the potential for cargo bikes in terms of last mile delivery. So that was, again, this local last mile delivery rule is a major part of the Sustainable Freight Action Plan, which Jason mentioned up on the PowerPoint. In addition to, it's specifically mentioned as a pilot program in that plan, in addition to, of course, meeting all of our legislative and administrative, environmental, public health, social equity goals that would meet that purpose. So kind of in the process where we're at is that was earlier this year was the first meeting. We're still in the process of drafting a letter and getting folks to sign on to submit to that specific division within the ARB, and the workshops and conversations are really ongoing at this point. But as far as like a very specific place in state policy that cargo bikes can be incorporated is very relevant to that topic, as Jason noted, for several minutes about the relevancy outside the country, but also, of course, it's gaining ground most notably in Portland up in Pacific Northwest. So this is something that CalBike will continue to advocate for and sees this particular program as kind of the most worthwhile place to advocate for it at.
Anyone else? What can we do? Thinking big. How can California increase the use of cargo bikes?
I think just in general, for most of the population, they would love to use more bikes, but safety is a big issue. So of course, improving our infrastructure as well as education for both drivers and cyclists so that people feel more confident riding bikes. And then just also getting more cargo bikes into the community. A lot of people just aren't aware that these are an option. So the more they're out there, the more people see that it's a viable transportation, form of transportation, the more popular they'll become, increasing the use of electric cargo bikes, because if you're towing around 100 pounds of kids or, a 300-pound load of groceries, that's really difficult for some people. So offering electric cargo bikes, but starting with that safety aspect and visibility.
A business person's perspective, like us, it would be nice to see public awareness as well as state of California awareness that food trucks aren't the only ways to deliver really good, wholesome meals. You don't have to have gasoline and a motor to be able to do that, because right now that's what they allow in the state of California. So we can come and bring this to you within like a farmer's market situation, but we're not allowed to come as a food truck does, and it's within the city of Sacramento. So it would be nice to have that understanding that it's actually a more viable way to bring it to you as far as the environment is concerned. It's just, I think there's not that understanding yet. It's something that's new, so I think if the public's more aware of it, then the city of Sacramento will be more aware of it too. They just don't have experience with it at this point.
How many people here ride a cargo bike? I'm just curious if anyone, hands up. And how many want to? Okay, good. It's not that hard. In fact, you're such a big target that you're seen a lot easier. So I feel actually safer on my cargo bike than I do on like a fast commuter. You're just, and then there's plenty of safety options, that make you more visible as a rider. So I really urge you to get one. Simple as that.
All right. Well, we've heard from all 4 of our distinguished panelists. Is there anyone who has a question or anything they'd like to offer? And by the way, it's easier if you come up to a mic if you can, because we don't have wireless microphones, which is probably better for our health if we don't trip on them, but it also makes it a little more awkward.
Well, it was easy because I didn't have to go anywhere. I am curious if you guys could talk about especially to the last question, about the kinds of cargo bikes that are available, about price points and where to get cargo bikes, and maybe a summary of the kinds of options that are available.
If I could shamelessly promote my product here, I have we're a Bike Friday dealer. Bike Fridays are made in Eugene, Oregon. They started off as a foldable company, but they branched into an area that's in demand, and that's cargo bikes. We have one. My colleague here has her Holiday here. We have one downstairs for test rides if you want to come down and check it out later on. They're very light. This is what I love about them, is they're very they move easily through in and out of traffic, and they use simple Shimano components, so that they're not proprietor product. Yeah, and they're made right here in the good old USA. So I have to really promote that part of it too, so we can get more people to make them instead of, $4,000 Dutch cargo bikes. Nothing wrong with that, but we need more bikes out there, so we have to make it more affordable. And these start at $19.95, which is pretty reasonable for an American-made company.
Yeah. So with cargo bikes, there's usually like two kind of main styles. There's the long tail where the back wheel is extended and the deck is longer, so you can put cargo in the back, versus a front loader like the Nihola trike here, or the locally made cycle truck, this orange one, in the front, either with one wheel in front or two wheels, depending on what you prefer. Front loaders tend to be more expensive. A cargo bike, you probably can't find one cheaper than about $800. A good quality one will be at least $1,000. Front loaders usually start at least $2,000. It's definitely important to test out a wide range of cargo bikes, because there's not going to be one bike that's perfect for everyone. Everybody has different riding styles, different uses. But if a lot of times I tell people how much my cargo bikes cost, and they say, well, you could get a car for that amount. But a car, you don't think of those ongoing costs. It's $10,000 at least a year to own and operate a motor vehicle. So this is a one-time cost, no insurance, no gas, maybe some extra burritos every now and then. So you're definitely saving a lot of money in the long run, but it's an investment, and I really found it to be very worth it. As soon as we got that cargo bike, our world changed. So I think it's great.
And a little follow-up question to that: how long can a good cargo bicycle last?
Forever.
Yeah, they're very, they break and you fix them, like everything else. But I think that in the world of cargo bike making, they're pretty durable. They're heavy duty. They've been reinforced. And you're not going a million miles an hour, so, they last a lot longer for that reason.
Our next, did you have more to say on
I'm going to ask a quick
that?
question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are they hard to ride or pedal? I mean, I know there are some do they all have motorized aspects, or are they mostly without motors, or how
I
does
think
that work?
you always have that option of electrifying any cargo bike, but they're a lot easier to ride than they look. Like anything, it takes a little getting used to. The steering is a little different. But that's about it. They're actually quite enjoyable once you get rolling, and you have all this stuff on your bike, and you just feel like you can do it all with it. It's actually it's a happy ride.
Are they multiple speeds, or?
Yes, they have just about every option that you can do with gears to make it easier. Yeah.
And our next question.
This is good. Some of these are pretty big, overall. Can you get onto the American River Parkway? Do you have access, like you can get through those bars?
The only time I got stuck was when I was bringing home a flat pack bookcase from IKEA, and that was too wide for the bars.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, they tend to be, I mean, they're usually about as narrow as a wheelchair. And so if the trail's ADA compliant, I would hope that you'd be able to get through.
And did you manage to get through somehow? What did you do?
Yeah, I had to move slowly.
Just had a question on, it kind of dovetails onto that, but are there any constraints as far as legal constraints or anything else to riding on the different paths, roads, bike lanes, anything like that, depending upon the size of any of these, or? And maybe parking.
There's no legal information about size of the bikes. Where it would come into play would be the electric system. So the California, it's relatively new, but now there's 3 tiers of electric bike systems, and there's different classifications, and depending on that classification will depend on what trails you can get into. So that would be where any legal issues would come into.
All right, do we have any more questions? There's a question. There's no question, but more questions.
I have a question, Jason. So I would like to get the panel's reaction on this. The cargo bikes are a little bit larger, and a lot of the bicycle racks that are available publicly are designed for just a regular size bike. They don't really accommodate them. I used to be in bicycle locker manufacturing, and we did not make a locker that can accommodate a cargo bike, although I always thought the cargo bike customers would be more interested in lockers than regular bicycle customers. What are your comments in terms of policy, funding, or do you perceive this as a problem? Am I the only one that perceives this as a problem, or is it a non-problem? Or just, I'd like to get the whole panel's reaction on parking infrastructure for cargo bicycles.
Well, I'm kind of a bomb thrower in this subject. I just park it wherever I want to. I really don't make it an issue. Of course, we have pretty primitive bike racks in general in the town, and I've gotten used to it. Plus, cargo bikes are very heavy, and they're heavier, I should say, than a regular bike. So the normal bike thief doesn't really want to chance it, when you're... So I feel pretty confident when I'm parking the bike that it's going to be there when I get back, if I'm going into the stores or something like that. And they usually have a double kickstand, which makes it easy to lock it up on its own weight. Yeah, that's it. It's really not an issue for me anyway. Somebody might have different point of view on it, but yeah, bike racks in general are pretty poor. We're a long way from making them regular for cargo bikes as well as just regular bikes. I mean, some of the systems are awful, but
let alone electric cargo bikes where you can charge.
Right. Yeah, that would be the next frontier, I think, would be.
One good thing about theft is that your bike is relatively rare at this point, and if you're running around town, you're slow and obvious if you steal someone's cargo bike. Any other perspectives or our next question? This person's been waiting.
So it seems like an obvious use of a cargo bike would just be to deliver mail, like postal service, daily paper mail. Is there like any discussion or movement towards that?
No, I mean, not that I'm aware of, at least. I haven't done a deep scan or dive into American literature in this case. I've done a superficial one, and I haven't seen any discussion about this, but it seems like common sense for sure, though.
I had a question about locking them, like you were talking about. I mean, do they have, like, for the UPS or those other delivery bikes, is there a way you can just like lock them like a car, like have a locking mechanism on the wheels so you could?
Yeah, the Dutch have for years used a type of U-lock that is connected to the frame where you just run the Oh, yeah. You can come and see the trike over here, and you'll see a special lock on there that does exactly that. It just it's a key lock that locks the rear wheel from moving.
Hi, my name is Sita Quatron. I raised and grew up with bike in Indonesia. So when I came here, my daughter right now, 21 years old, been teaching her to use public transportation as well as bike. The only problem that how do we encourage private and government entity to eliminate the requirement to drive car in job application so the prospective employees, especially millennials like my daughter, will not be discouraged to ride bike to work. Because one of the requirements that either me or her or somebody else trying to apply for the job, driver license. So how we can empower this thing so the millennial will not sacrifice their future and also save our environment.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Just my thoughts on that would be, starting with that whole cultural shift. People need to get used to the idea of that you don't need a car for everyday transportation. And, that's a good life skill to have a driver's license. I have access to Zipcar. A lot of people offer their cars for me to borrow when needed, but it ends up only happening maybe once a month, probably less. Overall. And so just getting that idea, if we're raising kids to believe that they can ride their bikes and not have to get in their cars and parents feel comfortable, I think that we're starting from the ground up, but it just needs to be this whole cultural shift out of this car-dependent culture where cars are the obvious choice and they don't need to be.
I can just kind of jump on that, at least from the policy perspective. I guess one thing is that Jason mentioned CalBike recently conducted a poll of 600 likely voters, and as he noted, 80% supported complete street type multimodal options. And a big part of what CalBike is working on at this point now is the implementation of SB1, the huge transportation gas tax bill, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So a big part of this right now, and many provisions within the bill, there's a lot of talk about multimodal options. Of course, the active transportation program was boosted. There's a specific program around congested corridors that specifically mentions the ability to think multimodally and have that mode shift in place. So there's a lot of different places within this bill that will get to that larger culture shift that is absolutely needed to get there. But of course, for example, the ATP program itself is only, 1 or 2% of total transportation funding. So that political question and connecting that public desire with political will is certainly key here in terms of that.
I just want to jump in with this little logistic announcement. We can continue. We had advertised that this went until 1 p.m. and then trying bikes out front. But we're all here having a good discussion. We can continue having discussion. Some people probably have to go. Don't forget there is food and homemade tea and this custom local dairy-free gelato at the back. And but please do stay if you can.
Thank you. I had a quick question that hopefully some of you guys have run into. I noticed all these different all these different size and shapes bikes. Are there any maximum constraints on the size and the load capacities or anything like that that you guys are aware of? Or we saw some of these really long trailers in the video, and so I was just curious if any of you guys had run into that.
No, none at all. Zero pushback on size, and I mean I've delivered everything from hay bales to food for 100 people, and so it's not as hard as it may seem out there. And yeah, as far as the law goes, I've never been stopped or harassed for any reason. So I think it's pretty clear that we can do this. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. Are there, I may have missed this, but are there any specific rules of the road that you have to be careful of that are different than other vehicles, either bicycles or cars at all? Are there any things that you have to specifically be careful about?
It would be the same as the California Vehicle Code as it applies to bicyclists. So the same thing as bicyclists have all the same rights and responsibilities as motor vehicle drivers who are considered vehicles as per California Vehicle Code. So just then being considerate and riding appropriately. The main one's not riding against traffic, following the rules of the road, the signs and signals, being predictable, being visible as much as possible.
Is it harder? You know, I know with a bike you can kind of maneuver different places and it's pretty easy, but this is a little bit bigger. Do you feel more awkward, like you're kind of in between being a vehicle and a bicycle? Sort of, you know, you're not going as fast as a vehicle, but yet, et cetera.
Yeah, I've mastered the 14-point turn on narrow roads, but otherwise, not so much. I mean, the cargo bikes are pretty efficient with pedaling. You'd be kind of surprised. Like with the bike and the trailer, I was maybe moving at about a 6-mile-an-hour pace. On a cargo bike with the same amount of weight, I probably move about 13, 14 miles. So I actually feel like it's a more efficient weight distribution. With an electric bike, they're capped off at 20 miles an hour for most styles. So that can help somebody who might feel a little bit leery about riding in traffic. Like you're able to keep up a little bit better, easier for starting and stopping.
I'd like to just add that the more you ride with them, the less that first initial, like, oh, I'm too big for the road kind of feeling that you get. So after a while, it just goes away and you become actually more rightful to the road. And people really do respect a cargo bike a lot more than like if you're all kitted up on a race bike. They give you a little more room. They pass you with a little more space. I found, yeah.
Hello. Got a question for you. Yes, I think you said something along the lines of running into challenges with using cargo bikes as an official business delivery vehicle with the city of Sacramento.
For us
Okay.
specifically as a food vendor.
So what can we do? Do we write Steinberg? What can we do to get that?
That might help. Food trucks, we're rated as a food truck. So this is kind of a real direct thing, but we're rated as a food truck, but because we don't have a motor, which I personally think is an advantage environmentally, we aren't allowed to participate like food trucks are. So events that you see them at, or where they can pull up to things and serve you. In the city of Sacramento proper, we are not allowed to do that. So yes, it's a very local thing. And every city has different ordinances for that. But for us particularly, it's a city of Sacramento thing. And I think it's just that, just like it used to be with food trucks, they hadn't caught up with the times, you know? So they just don't quite know what to do with something like this. And they look at it and it doesn't have a motor. Well, it's not a food truck, so it can't do what a food truck does. And they just don't quite know what to do with it. But in my mind, yes, it's a better solution to bringing something, you know, to the public. We don't have any emissions. We don't use we don't at this point even use electricity. So it's just human being power and insulation.
So if I start off by myself writing Steinberg, hey, maybe you should reconsider. I mean, I'm not familiar with the process of getting them to, hey, this is an alternative.
I think a lot of, you know, right now, I mean, I think there have been a couple people in the past. I think the only people, John, right now that even have anything set up like this. Are you aware of anybody else at this time? Are you aware of anybody else right now? I think we're singular right now in the city of Sacramento, I believe, that has a setup like this that's licensed, but is set up like this. So granted, it's very narrow, but I'd like to see other people be able to do it. And I think it's not necessarily it's not popular at all, right? Because we're the only ones, but because it's not as viable as it could be if you were able to do the other thing. So yeah, that's what I would recommend, is if you want to see more vendors be able to responsibly bring you things that don't require a huge gas generator and a really big truck, you know, to vend food legally, let your mayor know, let your city council know that that's a change that should be made. Because I don't think they know. I don't think at that level that they really understand clearly.
I have a little follow-up question to that important line of inquiry, but we've got a hand over here, so I'll let you go first.
Sure. I'm interested in carrying kids. I've looked at front loaders. I've looked at long tails. Is one better than the other? I saw in the video that front loaders have those nice big rain covers. So that's one advantage I can see. But anything you think I should know about that?
I think you should test them both. How old are your kids?
Like 6 months and 2.5.
So front loaders are nice because you can see what they're doing, especially if California Vehicle Code says that a child must be strapped into a seat until they're 4 years old. So front loaders often have a little bench seat with seat belts, which can be really nice, especially for a really tiny one. You can buckle in a car seat right into the front of it. The weight tends to be lower and more stable. And then also you can get sun covers, rain covers, so there's lots of nice options for them. The downside for a front loader would be a higher cost. There's definitely a learning curve. More of a learning curve when you're pedaling with your front wheel 3 or 4 feet in front of you. So it takes a little bit of time. Don't get discouraged right off the bat. Whereas the long tail rides a little bit more like a standard bicycle. I feel like long tails have a longer lifespan because then as your child gets older, they can just sit on the deck. There's a little bit more independence. The weight feels a little bit more stable. With a front loader, as your kid gets taller, there's the risk of hitting them in the head with the handlebars. But they're wearing a helmet, they're fine. So there's definitely pros and cons to both sides. Test them both out. I've owned 4 cargo bikes with front loaders, long tails. I love them all, but it's just a personal preference. With your kids that young, I would recommend probably a front loader, investing in that. And the nice thing is cargo bikes have a really high resale value, so it's a big investment up front. You're paying that $3,000 to $5,000, but then you can usually sell them for about 70% of the cost. So, and then you can move on from there.
Can I ask a quick follow-up? So about the resale, what besides Craigslist, are there good places to go for the used market?
I do a lot of the Facebook, like cargo bike Facebook groups. Revolutions Per Minute, which is a cargo bike documentary, but also a Facebook group, is a really great resource. And so there are different communities. Sacramento Kittical Mass is a local community. San Francisco has a wider array of cargo bikes just because it's a bigger city, and I think there are more cargo bikes out there in general. So looking at Craigslist is a really good option. Just make sure they're not stolen. That's kind of my caveat for that. But the Facebook groups can be really helpful too.
I would like to add that one of my, the best thing for the front loader is that the kid has the front row view of the street, and you can talk to them and point things out to them, where when they're behind you, it's a little bit more difficult. That was in the early stages. That's a really important thing to me, is to be able to communicate with your kid, and show them what you see, connect up with them while you're riding.
And see when they drop the toys on the
Yeah, right.
Eating the block of cheese in the plastic. You can see when they're eating the block of cheese in the plastic, or when they drop the toys off the edge, and all those good things.
Anything else on kids? I have a question I was going to ask, in particular for John, but for everyone in the room. John and I had a good discussion about this in advance of this event, and evidently the impact of the gig economy, as it's sometimes called, the sort of the startups that are now doing a ton of delivery, an increasing amount of small package delivery, and competing for the market, have been evidently pretty disruptive to the fledgling re-emergence of the cargo bike market. I wonder if folks want to say anything about that and how to deal with that.
Well, I guess I never stopped using mine, so I'm not sure what you mean about. I'm not sure what you mean about stopping the use of cargo bikes.
Okay. Has there been an impact of all these new companies doing deliveries by car?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
That has affected
Yes.
the bicycle delivery business?
Most definitely, and it's a matter of technology and marketing and promoting. It's a PR world out there, and you just got to keep marketing and promoting your ideas. And these companies are really strong. They have a lot of money behind them in marketing them themselves, and we're grassroots, so it's a little harder. But and where there's a will, there's a way. Changing things, changing the course of things. Again, the car companies are strong. They market. They have strong marketing skills to get people to choose a car over a bike. We
Do you
need
think
to do a
people
better
know,
job.
when people try to get something delivered from a restaurant, do you think they know that they have the option to hire a bicycle company instead of a car-based company?
We're working on that. We're working on an app right now as we speak that will help promote that over these guys.
An app, I think I heard you say, such as like a mobile device, cell phone,
Yeah,
you can order.
exactly. A mobile app that you can order your food strictly through Edible Pedal and not get.
Is that something that you're finding easy to do, and has that been an important part of any effect on your business in particular?
Yeah, it's crucial. It's crucial. I'm finding out a little late, but not too late, that I need to help promote it a little stronger.
So as a small business, how hard is it to develop an app, and is there any organization that would, say, make an app for all the different delivery companies by bike?
Oh yeah, the
Share
Hacker
resources.
Lab, the local Hacker Lab has got a lot of app makers, a lot of high-tech kids that are chomping at the bit to make their names known and do well. And I'm working with one right now, actually.
Great. Is that something you think you would share to other bike companies, or?
Oh, most definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? It's wonderful to see to everyone here, and also we had a lot of folks who work in the area who had to go at one, but also folks who couldn't make it until one who flooded in. There's a long line at the bicycle gelato and so forth, and people walking around checking out the bikes. And we have the winner of the next question is.
It's a really important question. Where can we find your gelato normally?
Well, you can always contact us directly. Our information is back there, but we're going to be at the Oak Park Farmers Market this Saturday, and we're often at the Midtown Farmers Market as well. We pop up at events all over town, so if you go on our website, you'll see our calendar. My husband is really good at keeping that up to date and letting you know where we're going to be. But you can, like I said, you can always contact us directly. We're in our production kitchen every day, just about, and if you just have to have something, you can come by and pick up a pint from us directly too. So.
Andrea, are there any restaurants carrying your
Oh,
product?
yes, thank you, John. Veg Cafe above Thai Basil is carrying our gelato now. Identity Coffees, also you can get a scoop, a couple different flavors there. And Temple Coffees on K also has some of our gelato. So, and there are more coming online. So, but again, you can check the website and then you'll see where they are. So, and usually when you see that cart, we have bars too. We have all kinds of gelato bars. So. That's the deal. In addition,
And
to
they're
scooping.
great too.
Yeah,
I love them.
So thank you. Thanks for asking that.
I would just like to add in a little bit more commentary. I'm from Practical Cycle from Old Sacramento, and we deal with cargo bikes. We have long-tail bikes. We have the Naholas. So if you're looking for something to test ride, we definitely offer free test rides on our bikes, and that way it encourages people to try these bikes to see what they're all about, and also to see what's most compatible for them. And as far as riding cargo bikes, we've traveled all around town to events and whatnot. I have the electric cargo bike over there. It's the red big one over there, and tends to be really advantageous, especially if you have a couple of kids or even just a couple of pals that you want to go on for rides and whatnot. So I highly recommend, if you guys ever have the time, to come down and just test out the cargo bikes and see what's most compatible for you.
Gal, do you still have the Yuba for rent?
No, not anymore, but we have the Edge Runner. And the Edge Runner is a type of long-tailed cargo bike too that has this accessory called the hoopty. It's basically a barricade around the kids so that way they don't actually fall out and they're safely secured inside. So there's a lot in the market that we have at our shop that you can come and check out and see what works for you.
Any other questions? Any other thoughts on how does that, oh, we've got another question. Okay.
I was just wondering if, like, any of you or anyone in the room might have words of encouragement, especially to just keep it on the record from this conference, just words of encouragement for people who feel discouraged for all sorts of reasons, just feel like this is a car world and, there's no way out. And so if there's just some words of encouragement to just keep pushing through to people who haven't seen a way out of that, I'd really appreciate that.
I think for me, it's just finding other people who are already doing what either you hope to be doing or what you're already doing, like find that community. And for me, when we started, there weren't very many families out on bikes. And so I reached out online. And so when I had a question or I had a conflict come up and I said, who's dealt with this and how did you get through it? And I would get these great words of encouragement. I would get great tips, great ideas, just that hive mind to turn to. And now there's a much stronger local community, which again is really helpful. And, maybe the cargo bike that you went out and invested in isn't the perfect cargo bike for you and you're suddenly struggling and you're stuck with this bike and you can reach out and find out what your options are and, just remembering that you're not alone. I mean, this whole room was filled with people who are either already doing this or want to be doing this. There's just so many people who are there. We just need to reach out to each other and realize that we're a lot stronger than we think that we are.
I'd like to just add, there's a philosophy on the road where there's a lot of people that try to turn it into an adversarial thing where it's cars versus bikes, and it's counterproductive because you seem to pull in trouble with cars when you're thinking like this. It's really best to just make a lot of eye contact with people in cars, get their attention, and treat them with respect, and you'll get it back, and you won't feel so like this is never going to happen. It plays a big part in it, and it's just staying friends with the car world. I've seen it from both ends where you're just mad as hell and you don't want to take it anymore, and you're just it's just not worth it. Just be happy out there on the road, and they'll follow when they see that you're happier than that they are, fighting their road rages. That's it.
Just to add, CalBike also has 16 local affiliates, and SABA, the local Sacramento group, bicycle advocacy group, is also here. So being able to join others that seems like a go-to place for sure to meet folks. And there's a bicycle kitchen too in Sacramento and other various locations where you can meet folks and learn to be out there and confident in yourself.
I also think a really good bike ride is great to improve your mood. So when you're feeling down, get on your bike and just go somewhere nice and quiet and pretty.
And if you think things aren't changing, they really are, because I was talking to John earlier, and when my children were very little, there was one new option, and that was the burly cart that pulled behind your bike, and we were so excited as parents to have it. And now when I'm in this room, even as a casual bicyclist, and I see all the options and how many people every day that I see out actually using them. We were the only people in our neighborhood who had that burly cart. So when we went on a bike ride, we were by ourselves. Nobody else that I knew had one, and they weren't riding around with their kids in it. They maybe had the little seat on the back. So it's a really... So, okay, that's 26 years ago, I'll date myself, but it's a really big change. So the world is changing for us here too. and it's an improvement. And it might not seem like a lot, but it is. It's changing. It's a lot better than it was, and I think with this kind of enthusiasm and work, it's going to keep improving. So.
Thank you so much. And with that, if there are no more burning questions or comments, perhaps it's a good time to close this. Thank you so much, everyone who's come. It was really a pleasure. Applause for the panel. Thanks again, everyone. And by all means, feel free to follow up with any of us at any time and all the other resources. There's a lot of resources now. Thanks for coming.